Well, welcome to Ravensdale Bible Academy. Today's course is Think Again Christian Fact Check, and today's lesson is Liberty is Sinking Before Our Eyes, and half our country likes it. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, first of all, we start with whatever position you are taking, whether as a Democrat or a Republican. I think one of the things to understand is that pretty much our country is split almost down the middle. It's not exactly 50-50, but it's probably somewhere like 40-40 or 45-45 with a slim, 10 or 20% margin in between. But for the most part, when you see something happening, when you see an opinion or an argument being put forth by politicians or by the news media, one of the things you consider is half the country likes it. Most recently, we just had a presidential change, and in the first days of the transition from President Donald Trump to President Joe Biden, there have been several alarming events that would suggest that our liberty is sinking before our eyes. But one of the horrifying things to consider is that, well, a lot of people like it that way. A lot of people like it that way. Well, what are the events? I want to key in on just three, on just three events. One, there were several irregularities, hard for me to say, during the voting process. There are a lot of people that have a lot of concerns, and there was a desire to petition the government, to go to the courts, to seek justice, to seek understanding that we're denied. Our freedom, our liberty was denied to petition the government. The second element I want to look at is social media censorship. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, was kicked off of Twitter for life. Parler, a competitor of Twitter, was banned and taken off the internet. We have concerns about that in our freedom of speech, our liberty to have freedom of speech. And then executive orders. President Joe Biden stepped in and within 2 weeks already has an alarming 25 executive orders. That means that there's no consensus from both sides, that he just did what he wanted to do. He just did what he wanted to do. Well, where's our liberty? Where's our balance of power? And so one of the questions we want to ask is, well, what is liberty? What do we understand liberty to be? And liberty is the freedom. Liberty is freedom that America has built upon. America didn't invent liberty, but liberty was something that for centuries people were craving and desiring to have this yearning for freedom. This is what made the Pilgrims get on a ship, risk their lives, lose 50% of their people to come to America for freedom, for liberty, the freedom to worship their God their way and not the government's way. Our country was built on freedom. Our country was built on the liberty of the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, right? That's in the Bill of Rights. America is a country that was founded on the principles of do not tax me without asking me, taxation without representation, taxation without the vote, without the approval. Free speech is liberty. It's the right to disagree with your government. It's the right to protest your government. It's the right to freely express your ideas. See, we believe that if you freely express your ideas and if you're honest about them and you present what socialism is and you present what capitalism is, that the better idea will win. Now, if you conceal it, if you silence one side and you lie about the other, that becomes a problem. Well, in recent years, we've seen these three elements sinking before our eyes, but very recently we've seen them really take a deep dive very quickly. Well, one of the things we want to anchor in on at Ravensdale Bible Academy is we don't only look at facts, we also look at biblical support. We want to get our arms wrapped around, well, what does the Bible have to say? Does Jesus have anything to say about this? And one of the interesting things to understand is that Christianity has always been at the forefront of freedom and liberty. People have always used their religious freedom of Christianity to gain their free will, their freedom to live. In John 10:10, Jesus himself says, I came to give life. Now, he came to give the freedom of life, the ability to live and to give it abundantly. Jesus didn't come with laws. Jesus didn't come with rules. In fact, when we start in the Old Testament, do you know what the first command is? Do you know what the first rule in the Bible is? And it's repeated over and over and over again. Be fruitful and multiply. Here's the law. Get married, have babies, have a good life. See, there's a lot of freedom within the pages of Scripture. People want to identify, let's say, the Ten Commandments or the laws or the rules, but within those laws, within those rules, there's a lot of freedom within the playground. And so we take those ideas, and so did the framers of the Constitution, the framers of the Bill of Rights, who founded America, understood the freedom of religious expression. This is why the separation of church and state wasn't that the church would not be involved in the state. No. It was that the state would not suppress the church. All you have to do is look at the First Amendment, which clearly says that you have a right to peaceably assemble. You have a right to free religion. Why would people who wanted to separate religion from community write that as the first thing if it wasn't actually the other way around? Let's be careful that government doesn't infiltrate church. Well, the third aspect of our fact-checking is our logic. We can use our brains. We can process information, facts, use the Bible and say, I think there's a biblical support for liberty. Liberty is a good thing. We don't want to oppress people. Some people even wrongly use the book of Acts and say, look, they were living in communal living, coming together, sharing everything, selling their homes, sharing their money, selling their goods. That's the framework for communism. The difference is in Christianity, it's a free will giving. It's a free will offering. It wasn't by suppression. It was by choice. Whereas communism, it's by oppressing people. It's by demanding at the hand of the gun or imprisonment. Well, the foundation of our Constitution has been, like I said, the bedrock of our country. And so the first thing I want to look at is, in our recent elections, we had several irregularities. Now, I'm not saying that it was a fraud. I'm not saying that it wasn't. All I'm saying is that we visually saw recorded evidence of people paying to get votes, of people bringing votes after hours, of people using votes that were brought in mysteriously. We saw video evidence of these things. And so we have questions. We have a right to question. The problem is when we had people who wanted to take this to court, do the legal process, right? To in essence have the petition of government. They were denied that. Well, the problem with that is for all of those people who saw irregularities, who witnessed them, and then you don't give the opportunity to get your day in court, well, now we're even more unstable about the truth of our liberty. And that's a major concern. The second issue that we noticed was censorship. A permanent suspension of Donald Trump, the acting president of the United States. Who is Twitter that has the right to shut down the voice of the president? That should be very disturbing. If they can shut down the president, if they can shut down $1 billion company in Parler, then they can certainly shut you down. Well, one of the pillars of Americanism is the freedom of speech. That means you can be wrong. That means you can be a racist, bigot, homophobe. You can be evil and speak. We've seen that for years. We've seen the liberals be the proponents of burning flags in the street, with free speech being their mantra. But if you are on the wrong side of a debate or argument, then we're starting to see, well, liberty is only free for some. And that's very, very dangerous. And then finally, the executive orders. The executive orders, yes, every president signs executive orders, especially when there's times of emergency and you just don't have time to debate. But what's happened over the years is these executive orders have become tools of power. One of the foundations of America is no taxation without representation. What does that mean? That means we vote on it. Hey, if we go to an election and we lose the vote, and then we have the House and the Senate, and let's say the Republicans don't have the majority, and the Democrats are able to pass laws that Republicans don't like, but they have the votes. Hey, you have been representative. We're a representative government. But when a president just at the whim of his hand can dictate new law that demands that I pay, well, that goes against my freedom and my liberty. That's a direct undermining of taxation without representation. And so for a president to unilaterally say, you know what, we're going to just open our borders. By what right does a president have to say we're a borderless country? What's a country if it doesn't have borders? That's like saying, what's a house without doors? I mean, if anybody could just come in and out of your house, sleep on your bed, eat your food, well, that's not your house. It's at the core of your freedom and your liberty is having the border walls that define it. And so when a president, through executive order, gives that up, well, then our freedom is in jeopardy. And so in conclusion, the difference between like conservative and progressive, conservative is a conservative view towards, let's say, the Constitution, that we're going to move slowly, that we're going to change it slowly, that we're going to think about it. When we see a fence, before we tear the ugly fence down, we ask, well, why is the fence here? Why was it put here in the first place? The fence has a purpose. So let's ask questions, let's debate, let's vote on it, let's communicate, let's collaborate, let's be transparent, right? That's the process of a conservative. The progress of a progressive is I'll do what I want, when I want, and how I do it. If I see a fence, I want to tear it down, I tear it down. If I see a fence and I want to jump over it, I jump over it. If the sign says do not enter, I enter. If it says warning, no trespassing, who cares? I'll do what I want. That's a progressive mindset. And we see that now on full display as a result of our elections. And it appears as though the biggest issue at risk right now is liberty. So think again, Christian.